Hello aspiring developers, how are you? I hope you are fine. In today's class, we learn about CSS borders and also we learn something about CSS background. So without much ado, let's dive in. If you're following this course, you know that there's a repo that we forked, so you can just pull the notes. And if you're new, I'll put the link of the repo in the video description. So if you clone that repo and you pull the changes, in your local machine, you'll see this 04 background, and that folder contains the notes that we'll use in this course. So let's start learning about CSS borders and background. I'll just create a new file here. I'll call it index.html, and also another file. I'll call it style.css, like that. Then in the HTML, I'll just put my boilerplate there and rename the title to CSS border. Then also I'll add a link to my CSS file. That's not it. It's supposed to be CSS. Yeah, that's the one. I'll add my link to my CSS. So now I have my HTML file there. My CSS file is here and they're linked. Let me just close this one and I'll open my notes using the readme and I'll split my page like that. Then drag this readme here. So I'll have my files on the left side, my HTML and my CSS files. Then on the right, I'll have the notes from the course. So now let's start learning about CSS borders. Borders in CSS are used to create a boundary around elements. Yesterday, while we were talking about the CSS box model, we saw how the border created the boundary. And today we learn more about borders. So let me just create a div inside the body. Create a div and give it a class of container. Let me save this one. Then I'll style the container in my CSS. That is the class selector. Then we say that if you don't put content in an element, it will not be visible in the browser until you provide the height. So I just provide the height here. The height will be 50 pixels. And I'll provide the width of my container should be 100 pixels, like that. So we'll first start learning about the first property of border, that is the border style. So let us learn about the border style. Border style. So border style defines what kind of border that you want. You can see these are the values of the border style. You can choose either a dashed border, that will be just dashes, dotted, double, or groove. And there's also this one called solid. I'll just put mine to be solid. You can see in the notes they are described there. Dotted. These four are the most common ones that are used: the dotted, dashed, and the solid. But there are also other values I showed you, and you can see them here in Visual Studio Code. And I just write border style. There are also these other values, but we just talk about these four values. So if I put border style solid, let's go to the browser and see how this looks like. So if you go to the browser, you can see it is just a continuous line, just as a continuous line there, and that is what we call border style solid. If you put border style dotted, it will be a dotted line. If you put dashed, it will be dashed line. And if you select border style none, there will be no border. And that is how you use the border style property. So let us look at the next property, that is the border width. Before we look at the border width, let me mention something, that the border style can have up to 4 values. If you put one value, that value will be for all the sides. If I put 4 values, the first value will be for the top border, the next value will be for the right border, the next for the left, the bottom, then the last for the left. Like we talked about padding, you start from the top, right, bottom, then left. So let me just copy this code here, and you can see how that looks like. So you can see this is for the top border, this dotted will be for the top, dashed will be for the right, solid will be for the bottom, then double will be for the left. So let me save this code and see how it looks like in the browser. So you can see here in the browser there are those 4. Let me zoom my screen a little bit. Let me zoom this browser. I think it's maximum. It can no longer zoom. So this is the maximum. You can see that the top border is dashed. This one is the top border is dotted. This one is dashed. This is just solid, and this one is doubled. And that is how we set in the code. Also, you can just inspect. If you inspect, you can see all these properties in the developer tools. When you go here, when I select my div, let me select my div. I select this div, then you can see my styles are here. The top one was dotted, the right was dashed, the bottom was solid, and the left was double. And that is how you apply different borders, different types of borders to the same element in CSS. So let's look at the next property, that is the border width. So now you know about the border style. I'll just leave mine to solid. I'll just remove the other one so that it can have just a continuous line throughout the element. So let's talk about the border width. So the border width specifies the width of the border. You can put the value either in pixels, or you can use the predefined values like thin, medium, or thick. So you can specify with using one value like that, and if you use one value, you specify the entire border of all the sides. Also, like the style, you can specify for the top border, let's say the right border to be different width, the bottom border maybe 10 pixels, then the left border 4 pixels. If you put 4 values, it will be specified for the top, right, bottom, and left, just like how we looked at the 4 values of the pattern. So let me save my code and see it in the browser. If you go to the browser, you can see that our element has different width of the border. Remember that I put all the borders to be just solid, so you can see our border is all solid, but the width is different. The top has a 2 pixel width, the right has a 5 pixel width, the bottom has a 10 pixels width. You can see the bottom is very thick, it has a 10 pixels width, and the left has a 4 pixels width. Also, you can specify the width using the predefined values like thin, thick, or medium. So that is it with the border width. So let us look at the next element. You've seen how you can specify. I'll just remove all these ones and leave my border width to be just 2 pixels like that. So my width will just be 2 pixels all round. So the next property is border color. Border color here. So in border color, the border color property is used to set the color of the 4 borders. If the color is not set, it will inherit the color of the element, and the color of the element by default, if you don't set the color of the element, it will be black. So if I don't set the color, you can see my border was just black in color because the element by default is black. But if I put a different color of the element, the border will change according to the color of that element. That's what it's saying here. So even the border color, you can just put four colors to specify the color of the top border, the right, the bottom, and the left. Or if you put one color, that color will specify all the color of all the borders. So I'll just put mine to be color red. And if I save, you can go to the browser and see that the border will be red in color. Let me go to the browser and see that. So if you go to the browser, you can see that my border is solid, 2 pixels width throughout, and has a color of red. But if I wanted it to have different colors, I could specify the color of the top border, the color of the right border, the color of the bottom, and the color of the left. If you wanted the border to have different colors, you can just try that out by yourself and see how that will look like. But me, I'll just maintain just one color across all the borders like that. Just red color in all the borders, the top border, the right border, the bottom border, and the left border. And that is how you use the border color property. So let us look at the border shorthand. So there is a border shorthand property. So the border shorthand property is written like this. Just say border. Then the first value will be for the border width. The second value will be for the border style. And the last value will be for the border color. So if I wanted to set these 3 values, the border style, border width, and border color at once, I'll use the border shorthand property. So if I want my border to remain the same, I'll just say the width is 2 pixels like that. So I'll write here 2 pixels. The style is solid, so I'll write here solid. and the color is red. Right here, red. So this here is a shorthand property to specify all these three properties. So you can, instead of writing three properties, you can just write one property to specify all the three values. And you know, programmers need a short way of doing things so that you can minimize the number of lines of code. So you can just use the border shorthand property to specify the border width, border style, and border color. I'll just put this in the next line there so that you can see it's starting with border width 2 pixels, then border style solid, then border color red. So I'll just comment this one, then save my code. You can go to the browser and will confirm that the border will just remain the same. But now we'll have used just one property, the border shorthand property. Let us go to the browser and confirm that. So if you go to the browser, you can see that my border is just 2 pixels. Width has a with a style of solid, and it is color red. And I put all those properties using the border shorthand property. And that is how you use the border shorthand property. The other thing about borders is the border radius property. So the border radius property is used to add rounded borders to an element. So if I want my element to have some smooth edges, I can use the border radius property. And border radius, you can put the value either in percentages or in pixels. So I'll just put mine to be 10 pixels like that, and let me save. Let's go to the browser and see what effect this will have. If you go to the browser, you can see that our border has some smooth edges. Here, the smooth edges in our border, and that is how you use the border radius property. And also, if you wanted the element to be circle, you can just play with the border radius values, and the element will be circle. For example, you can try. Let me try putting. I'll use the developer tools here. You can try to edit the here to be like 50%, and you can see how that behaves. It will be oval, and if I put 100%, still oval. Maybe I adjust the. Should I adjust the height, the width to be 50 pixels also? That, so you can see if I put the height and the width to be the same value, that will create a square. Then I put the border radius to be 100%. You can see it creates a perfect circle, and that is how you use the border radius property. So if you want it to be an oval, you can put the border radius to be 50%, like that. But the height the width has to be larger than the height. So maybe increase the width size to be, let's say, 100 pixels, like that. Then you create an oval. But in most cases, let me just refresh. This is the most use of the border radius, just to create a smooth edge at the corner. Mostly in images, you just have to create some smooth edge so that your image will not have sharp edges. That is the work of the border radius. So now let's talk about the CSS background. Now let's talk about the CSS backgrounds. So the background properties of CSS are used to add a background effect for elements. The most common one that you have looked at till now is the background color. So I'll just put a background color here in this, say background color. Let me put blurry wood. I think this background color property, you have used it for some time now, and you have seen how it looks like. So this is one of the properties for adding background to your element, the background color. This property adds a color to your background, like that. I know we know how the background color looks like, so we'll talk about the next property, that is the opacity. So this opacity here, opacity is used to specify the transparency of an element. It can take values from 0 to 1, decimal 0.1, 0.2. The maximum that it can take is 1. Also, you can use percentages, and the highest percent is 100%. So when you want to add transparency to a background, you can increase the opacity level. If you want it to be less transparent, you do the same. So let me put an opacity of 0.2. Let us save and see how it will look at in the browser. If you look at our container in the browser, you can see it has a background color of blurry, but it's not very clear because we added this opacity. So if I remove the opacity here in the developer tools, you can see it's now clear. So if you add opacity, it's a little bit not clear, and you remove it's clear. And also you can adjust this value here. Let me first put it. So I can adjust the value of the opacity. Let's say I put 0.5. You can see it's a little bit visible. And if I put 0.8, you can see it's visible now. It's starting to be clear. 0.9 is even visible, and if I put the ISO there is 1.0, it will be completely clear. And that is how you can adjust the opacity levels of different values. So if you want your background to be a little bit faint, you can put the value of the opacity level to be a little bit low, like that. And that is how you can play with the opacity values to change the transparency of your background, or any color that you want in your element. So that is it about opacity. The next property I'll talk about is the background image. So you can also add an image to be your background of your element. You can do that by using the background image property. So you can set background image, then here in the value you use the URL function to add the path to your image. Like me, I'll use the URL, then I'll say dot slash, then I choose my background image, like that. So let me save this code and see how it will look like in the browser. So if I go to the browser, I can see my image is there, but it's not visible enough, because I think the opacity is preventing it from being visible. So if I remove the opacity and the developer tools, you can see now my image is visible. Also, let me remove this background color. Yeah, I think my image is now visible. And that is how you add an image as a background of your element. So you can put some text on top of it. But if you decide to put an image as a background, you should put an image that is not disturbing. So in case I put some text in front of my, let me just put some text inside this div. Let me just say this div and to edit it. And let me put some text inside here. Let's say I put a paragraph and say paragraph, like that. You can see that the text is visible, unless you change the color of this text, but I think it's not very disturbing. Let me adjust the width of the, let me adjust this width, or let me just remove the width so that it can be visible, like that. You can see my paragraph can be read, but some people might struggle with this image. Some people who have some visual problems. That's why it's advisable for you to select a good image that will not disturb people from reading the text on top of that element. So we're learning about how to add an image as a background, and that is how you add an image as a background to an element using the background image property. And you can use the URL function to select the image. You can see here is my image. This is the image that I put, and this is how it appears here. The next thing that we look at is the background repeat. So let me just change this image. I put some other image here. I downloaded some other image. I think it's this one. And let me increase the height to 400, and I'll just maintain the width like that. And let me just comment out this opacity so that it can be visible. So if I put this image, let us see how this image looks like in the browser. If you go to the browser, you can see that our image is repeating vertically. You can see the image is repeating. Let me just go to developer tools so that you can see how the image should be and how it is showing in the here. I'll just click on this container, and I'll see that this is how the image should be. It should be just like this, just blue and white. But you can see here it's blue, white, then the image has ended here, then it's repeating again here, blue, white. So it's repeating, going down. So to solve this issue, you can use the background repeat property. So I can just add some property here and say background repeat, and there's various options. I can say no repeat. If I put it to no repeat, the background will not repeat itself. So let's see how that is. Let me just turn it on. I think, yeah, you can see now our background is not repeating. The image starts here and it ends here. This is the background color. Let me just remove this background color so that it should not affect our image. So you can see our image is now only once, and you see it's not repeating, because it said the background repeat to no repeat. So that will make our image not to repeat itself. And this repeat happens when the image is either too small, so if it's too small, it cannot fit to that container, so it has to repeat itself for it to cover all this height. Also, if I increase the width, let's say the width is, I put the width to be, let's say, 500 pixels, and just click here so you can see the image. I think the image is large enough to fit that width. Let us see. It cannot fit the 500 pixels. It ends somewhere here. Let me zoom out my screen. See, my screen is too big. I think there is visible like that, so that I cannot scroll too much. You can see if our image ends here, but if I remove this background repeat, you can see my image repeated to cover the whole screen, X and Y. So you can, if you put background repeat, no repeat, the image will not, it will just maintain that portion that it needs. Sometimes you need just an image to just fit on one, to not repeat itself. Some images, let's say like cars, this is just a solid image, so if it repeats, you can see there's almost no problem. But if it was a car, and if you not put this repeat, it'll be like car here, car here, car here. There'll be like multiple cars, and it might be disturbing to the viewer. So if you want the image to repeat, you can just put the background repeat, no repeat. Also, sometimes you might want the image to repeat on one direction. Maybe if you say it wants to repeat going east and west, you can say background repeat only X. So if I put repeat X, you can see it's only repeats going this side, but it does not repeat going down. That is how you set the background repeat to repeat X. And if I say repeat Y, it will only repeat going down, but going left it will not repeat. You can see the effect there. It repeats going downwards, but going this side it does not repeat. That is how we set the background repeat property. You can set it to no repeat, repeat X, or repeat Y, depending on how you want your image to be displayed. But there's also other values. You can see there's other values there. You can just check them and see how they behave. But the no repeat X and repeat Y, or you can set it to repeat. Those are the most common values that you'll see being used. But I think repeat is the default behavior. So if you set it to repeat, this is the default behavior. The background usually repeats. So this is the default behavior. The background repeat. So that is how you use the background repeat property. The other property that we look at is the background position. This background position is just straightforward. You just say where you want your background position. You specify where you want your background to be. Like let us just put top right, and we can change the values. I want my background to be the top side of my element and also my right side. So let us save this and see how it will be in the browser. And also you can go to developer tools and change to different value, and you can see what is the effect of changing the background position. If you take the browser, you can see that our element is misbehaving because we changed the width here in the developer options. But keep in mind that if you change the values in the developer options, they'll not reflect in your code until you change the values in your code. So I changed the width here in the developer options, but I did not change the value in my code. That is why the width was a little bit small. So you can just change it here in the developer options, but if you finish and you want it to maintain like this, you can also change it in your code. So I'll just maintain the developer options. So you can see our images. That let me remove this repeat and remove the background color. Where is that background color? Background repeat. We're learning about the background position. Okay, I'll just say where is that background image. I'll put the background image back so that you can see our image is there. Where is that background repeat? I think the background repeat is not there. So I'll just add my background repeat here. I'll say background repeat, no repeat. Background, I think I misspelled it. Background repeat. Background repeat. I say no repeat. You can see if I put my background repeat to no repeat, let me just remove this position first. You can see the image will be here. But so now you're learning about the background position. So I'll set my image to be at the top right. So if I put this background position back, you can see my background image is out at the top, but the right side. You can always change these values to be either top I can say I want it to be at the bottom right. I can just say bottom. If you just put right, it will be center right. So you just say bottom right, and it will come to the bottom right. And this is bottom left, it will go to the bottom left, and that is how you change the values of your background position. You can just put it anywhere you want. You can also say it on to be at the middle, and say center. If I say center, you can see it's at the center. And most cases will say center, like that. For it to be perfectly center in your element. And that is how you can play with the background position and place your image anywhere you want in your element. But I'll just maintain it my top right, or top left, anywhere that you want your image to be. But in most cases, you'll just put, if you put just top, it will be top, middle. So you can add any values too. You can play with the values top, right, bottom, left, center, and see how they behave. So I can say top left like that. And also I'll have to copy this code and paste it in my editor so that I don't lose my progress. So that is it with the, I've copied this code. I'll go to my VS Code and paste it. That is it with the background position. So let us look at the next element. So I just paste the code that I copied so that the code that you wrote remains there. So this is the code that we copied in the developer options, and I'll just save it so that it can be persistent. So the next element we'll look at is the background attachment. Background attachment, yeah. The background attachment property specifies whether the image will scroll or be fixed. Let us just put it fixed and see how it will behave. So it's a background attachment. We'll change the other option in the developer tools. So I'll say background attachment, and you can see the values are fixed, local, scroll, but you'll only look at the fixed and the scroll, and you see the difference between the fixed and the scroll. So now I'll just put it to fixed. So let's save our code and look it in the browser. Before you go to the browser, you can see there's some errors here. I didn't put the dot here to specify that it is a class selector. So I'll have to put the dot to specify it is a class selector. Also, this URL has to be in quotes like that. So those are the errors. So let us now save our code and go to the browser. So if you go to the browser, you can see that our background attachment is fixed, but you have to increase the height so that it can be scrollable. This is visible. This for you to see this. Let me just put it as, I think that is enough here, 500, or let's say 800. I'll increase the height for this to be able to be scrolled, and this scroll bar to come. For the scroll bar to appear, the height has to exceed the viewport height. The viewport height is the height of the screen from top to bottom. And if it is less than the viewport height or equal, the scroll bar will not appear. For the scroll bar to appear, the height has to exceed the viewport height. That's why I increase the height to 800 so that I can have this scrollable thing here. So yeah, now I put my background attachments to fixed, and it will be fixed to the top left. Now if I scroll, you can see my background is fixed here. It does not scroll. When I scroll the page, my background is still there. It will not move. That is not the case when I change this value to scroll. If I change the value to scroll, you can see when I scroll, it now the background also scrolls. It is not fixed at the top right. It moves with the page, and that is how we set the background attachment to either fixed or scrolled. So let us look at the next element. That is the background. I'm not sure. Let us look at it in the notes. The next thing is the background shorthand. So like the border, you have looked at the border shorthand property. Also, a background has a shorthand property, and that is background, just like that. And in background, you specify this. The first is the background color. So you put the first element. The next is the image. The next will be the background repeat. Then attachment. Then position. Then click Alt Z so it not to scroll. So this is the order of the background shorthand. And it does not matter if one property is missing as long as there is that order. So let us try to put all these elements into one shorthand property. So background color, do you have the background color? We had, but we just comment it out. So I'll just ignore this background color. So you can say that our background does not have a color. The background image, yes, it's there. So I'll just copy this URL and paste it here to the background image like that. So the background repeat, yeah, it was there and it was no repeat. So I'll say no repeat like that. The background attachment, yeah, it was there and the position was top left. So I'll just copy this top left and put it here to attachment. The background position, yeah, it was fixed. So I'll copy this fixed and write it here fixed like that. So this background shorthand property has defined all these three properties using one line. So if you comment these ones and you leave it like that, our code should just remain the same because you use this background shorthand property. So let us save and see how it is in the browser. So if you go to the browser, you can see that we used just one line, this line, to set the background image, background repeat, background top left is the background position, and the background attachment like that. And our code is just working the same. We just forgot the height. Like I said earlier, if you change the height in the developer options, it does not change in your code until you just change it in your code. So you can see now our image is just behaving the same. Our background is just behaving the same, and we use the background shorthand to set all the available options. And that is it for the background. That is it for the CSS background. So today I've learned about the CSS border and the CSS background, and I think that is enough for today. So see you in the next class. Peace out.